Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm excited to dive into one of the most powerful tools you can use in Excel, functions. Whether you're a beginner or an advanced user, mastering these functions will make your life so much easier. Stick around as I take you through the top 10 functions every Excel user should know. Let's get started. Let me walk you through this table first. We've got a simple data set here. We have different products, the number of units sold, the price per unit, and total sales for each product. Now, I'm sure you've noticed there's no grand total for the revenue at the bottom of the table yet. Here's the problem. Without a built-in formula, we'd have to manually add up all the total sales to find out the overall revenue. So let's say you do it the manual way. It takes time, right? And what if you've got a bigger data set than this? Doing this manually every time would be super tedious. Luckily, there's a much easier way. This is where the sum function comes to the rescue. Instead of adding all these values by hand, let's use the sum function to do it automatically. To calculate the total revenue at the end of this column, simply type equals sum of and type or select the rows you want to apply this function here from D2 to D9. This will sum up all the total sales from cells D2 to D9. And there we go. Excel instantly gives you the total revenue. Now, let's test it. If I update the number of units sold for any product, like changing the units for banana from 200 to 250, as you can see, both the total sales for banana and the overall revenue get updated automatically. No need to go back and manually change everything. This is the power of the sum function. So, using the sum function saves you time and prevents mistakes that often come with manual calculations. This function is just one of many that can take your Excel skills to the next level. Let's move on to another common task, calculating the average of students' marks. Here, we have a new data set with marks of students in different subjects. We have the names of students, their marks in 4 subjects: math, science, English, and history. And we want to calculate their average marks in the last column. Now, imagine you had to manually calculate the average for each student. For example, for student A, you'd have to add up all their marks and divide by the number of subjects, like this. That's not too bad for one student, but when you have a long list of students, it can get time-consuming. So let's solve this with Excel's average function. Instead of doing the math by hand, I'll use the average function. Let's calculate the average for student A. I'll click on the cell under average marks for student A and type equals average open parenthesis B2 to E2 close parenthesis, where B2 to E2 are the cells with student A's marks. And just like that, Excel gives us the average marks for student A. Now, instead of typing this formula for every student, we can use a neat trick. I'll select the cell with the formula we just entered. Then, I hover over the bottom right corner of the cell, and when the cursor changes to a plus sign, I simply click and drag it down to apply the formula to all the students. Now, the average marks for all students are calculated automatically in just one move. To another super useful function, the if function. Here, I've got a data set with student marks again, but this time we want to determine if each student has passed or failed based on their average mark. We want to check if each student has passed or failed. Let's set the passing mark at 75. Instead of manually comparing each student's average marks, we can use the if function. Here's how it works. I'll click on the first cell under the pass-fail column for student A and type equals if B2 greater than or equal to 75, pass, fail. This means if student A's average marks are greater than or equal to 75, Excel will display pass. Otherwise, it will display fail. And there it is. Excel checks the marks and returns pass for student A. Just like before, we can use the drag feature to apply this formula to the rest of the students. And just like that, we now have the pass or fail status for every student calculated automatically. The if function is great for decision-making scenarios like this, where you want Excel to return different results based on a condition. It's super versatile and a real time saver. The VLOOKUP function. This is one of the most commonly used functions when you need to search for a value in one table and bring related information from another table. We have two tables here. The first one contains product details with their product ID and price. The second table contains order IDs and the product ID of each order. We need to fetch the product prices from the first table and use them to calculate the total price for each order. Without using VLOOKUP, we'd have to manually search for each product ID in the first table to find the price and then enter it into the second table. This is time-consuming and prone to errors. As you can see, manually looking up each price and entering it is tedious. Instead, we can use VLOOKUP to automate this process. Here's how to use the VLOOKUP function to make our work easier. Let's say we want to find the price of the product for order A001. We'll use the VLOOKUP function in the total price column. I'll click on the first cell under the total price column for order A001 and type equals VLOOKUP left, parenthesis B8, $, A$2 colon, C $5, 3, FALSE right parenthesis. Let me break that down. B8 is the product ID we're looking up. $sign A2 colon C5 is the range where our product details are stored. The dollar signs are used to make this range absolute, meaning it won't change when we drag the formula down. Without the dollar signs, the range would shift when we copy it to other rows, which we don't want. 3 indicates that the price is in the third column of the range. False ensures that the function looks for an exact match. Excel now shows the price for the product ID in order A001. To calculate the total price, I'll multiply the price by the quantity. Now, let's apply this formula to the rest of the rows by using the drag feature. And just like that, Excel has fetched the prices and calculated the total prices for all the orders automatically. So, that's the VLOOKUP function in action. It's super handy when you're working with large data sets across multiple tables and need to pull data in automatically.
Count and COUNTA. Both are great for counting cells, but they serve slightly different purposes. Let's dive into each one. Let's start with the count function. This function counts the number of cells that contain numbers within a given range. It's useful when you need to know how many numerical entries you have. I have a list of products with their units, sold and price per unit. Suppose I want to count how many products have numerical entries in the units sold column. Here's how I do it. I'll type equals count, open parenthesis, B2 colon B9 close parenthesis in a cell to count how many cells in the range B2 contain numbers. The result will show how many numerical values are in that range. Excel counts all the cells with numbers in the units sold column. If you add more products or change the values, just update the range to include the new cells.
Let's look at the COUNTA function. Unlike count, COUNTA counts all non-empty cells in a range regardless of the type of data. This includes numbers, text, dates, etc. I have the same table, but this time some cells are empty. If I want to count all non-empty cells in the units sold column, I use COUNTA. I'll type equals COUNTA, open parenthesis, B2 colon B9 close parenthesis in a cell to count how many cells in the range B2 are not empty. Excel counts all cells that contain any kind of data, whether it's a number, text, or any other value. This helps you understand how many entries you have in your dataset. To summarize, use count when you only want to count numerical values and COUNTA when you want to count all non-empty cells regardless of the data type. Here, you can see the difference between the two functions applied to the same range. Count only counts cells with numbers, while COUNTA includes all types of non-empty cells. We've covered some powerful functions in Excel today, including sum, average, VLOOKUP, count, and COUNTA. These functions are essential tools that can make managing and analyzing your data much easier. In the next part of this video series, we'll dive deeper into more Excel functions and how to use them effectively. If you have any questions about the functions we've covered so far, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.